Visiting this hour with Dr. Don Frazier. He's the director of the Texas Center at Schreiner University, and we're going to talk about the Texas Center here in just a moment. Dr. Frazier, I asked you to come on the show because really giving us that historical perspective of all the craziness we see going on in the world. For me, I find comfort in history when I think about that what we're seeing is not necessarily unusual. We've been through this before, we've survived it. Even when we talked about the pandemic, we can go back and look at the 1918 Spanish flu, and we saw that we survived that as well. Is that why you love history yourself personally?
Yeah, it's strange being in the rear view mirror business because anymore I'm kind of in the windshield business, so it's easier to have that narrow focus because all of the people you're interviewing are dead and they don't give you much pushback. But it's amazing how weaponized history has become, frankly, in this modern political environment. And my gosh, you heard it rolling out of Vladimir Putin's mouth. He tried to give everybody a history lesson to justify dropping rockets on Kiev. So, I mean, history is vitally important, and it's the one subject that we push to the back of the heap.
That's right.
In public schools. It's remarkable. I think it's key to being able to maintain a republic, frankly.
Well, I totally agree with that. And it's interesting how history has become a weapon. And we could probably have you back and do a whole segment on cancel culture, but not for tonight. We're not going to get into that subject. But I do want to talk about sort of the historical backdrop of everything that's taking place. We have a State of the Union address tonight. We have a sitting president who is dealing with a lot at home. You got inflation issues that seemingly is only going to get worse with the war going on in Ukraine. Of course, the conflict in Europe. NATO is getting active. And I just want to talk from an historical standpoint. I'm not going to ask you about current events. But from an historical standpoint, have we had the State of the Union address this late? Because it's normally something we talk about in January. We're sitting here March 1.
State of the Union is a 20th century phenomena anyway. And it's kind of a floating date that was really designed to reinforce the trajectory of the sitting administration. So it's really political theater, and it doesn't really mean much. So have it now, have it 2 weeks ago, have it 6 months from now. When is it going to do the most good is really what these guys are asking themselves. Now then, what's putting the pressure on them to have it within a window of dates is really the American press, because they have gotten used to being briefed on the State of the Union, and they want to be able to see what everybody else is thinking. They want to, this whole kabuki theater of people standing up and clapping or sitting down on their hands and glowering at the camera, that's just become goofy to me. But
it started off as a written address, right? The presidents used to write it. Yeah.
Here's kind of where everything is. And then we entered into the visual age and away from the printed page in our new post-literate society.
Right.
And, who am I talking to? You guys in the picture business.
Right.
So it has now become theatrical in its approach. I'm not sure a whole lot gets done other than the people that are for the president are still for him, and the ones that are against him are still against him.
Does it change public opinion when a president has an opportunity? I mean, there's history where, I go back to, I wrote a paper in college, and you can now tell me what you would have graded it on without reading it. But, I made an argument that George H.W. Bush really started to lose the election because of his State of the Union address. And of course, that came after he raised taxes, promising not to. But you saw a turn in the polls after his State of the Union that he never recovered from. So is this really a pressure on President Biden heading into the midterms, all that's going on? I mean, the pressure's on him to deliver, right?
It is, and he's got several constituencies that he's got to make happy. So heading into the midterms, he's got to walk this tightrope between the progressive left wing of his party which has said, oh, we need to buy more Russian oil. We need to shut down American domestic production. We need to do all sorts of stuff in order to enact the Green New Deal. So he's got to make that bunch happy. And they're pretty robust and muscular in terms of throwing temper tantrums and getting people's attention.
Yep.
And everybody that's on the opposite end of the spectrum, who are just looking for him to flub a statement, to nod off, forget his train of thought, whatever's going to happen.
Not follow the teleprompter, right? Yeah.
That's right. Kind of, I'm not reading anything. Yes.
Right.
So it's this guy's got a near impossible task, and it's a near impossible task for a 50-year-old who's fit.
Right.
And this guy's a long way from that. So
just a couple of years away. Hey, I got 2 minutes. I want to talk about the Texas Center and the good work you're doing down there in Schreiner University. So for those watching in Los Angeles or Atlanta, tell us about the Texas Center, what you're doing down there.
Well, the Texas Center is located in Kerrville, Texas, and what we're doing is we're engaging in the big conversations in Texas. Texas is going to double its population by 2050. Which means that it will be the most important state politically, economically, you name it, of all the states in the union. That's the trajectory we're on. And the reason it's going to double its population is people are leaving places like California and New York and Florida and Guatemala and India and other places, and they're all moving here because something about the Texas model seems to encourage human flourishing. And the way that we pursue our happiness here seems to resonate with a lot of people.
And you mentioned yesterday that Texas has a larger GDP than Russia. Where does it rank in the world?
It's about 10th.
That's amazing. So if Texas was its own country, it'd be 10th in GDP.
Yeah, but it would have to spend a lot more money on stuff that we don't have to spend a lot of money on now.
That's fair.
I mean, that's kind of an artificial construct. But a lot of people like to point to that and say, just doing the numbers, Texas is the 10th largest nation on earth.
That's a good point. It's kind of like a solopreneur that doesn't have a separate budget that says my business is profitable. Yeah, but who's paying for the supplies? So that's a fair point.
Exactly. So there's always math involved.
There you go, Dr. Frazier. I know someone's going to watch this and they want to get a hold of you. What's the best way they can reach out to you and maybe pick your brain a little bit more about Texas history? And by the way, I happen to know you're an expert on Civil War history too. That's a whole nother show. But how can they get a hold of you?
You bet. They can go to our Texas Center website that y'all had up there for a second. And my email address is on there. I'm always happy for correspondence, and I'm happy to have the discussions. And we've got a YouTube channel too.
Thank you.
You can see kind of what we're doing.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate you.
Good to see you.